All right. Well, I appreciate you having me in your home today.
Yes.
I started going to your meetings, the Red Earth Descendant meetings, and then I just heard what you had to say, and I knew there was a lot that I needed to learn from you, probably more than what we're even going to discuss today. And so I appreciate your time and who you are to the community, but I'll allow you to give yourself your own introduction.
Ninjika Swapishki Miguan, Nindun Jabazik Swaj Mekog, Nin Migiziwag, Ndudame. So I'm Dan Wahpepah. I have a nonprofit, Red Earth Descendants, and we try to re-indigenize, and we are transitioning from our old nonprofit to Turtle Island Permaculture Institute to try to heal the earth, teach people how to work with the earth and provide for our elder relatives, which give us life.
You said re-indigenize. So what does that mean, re-indigenize?
Well, we've been indigenous people for hundreds of thousands of years prior to colonization, and colonization came upon the Europeans at around 6,000 to 8,000 years ago with ancient Sumer, and with the building of cities and canals, and they developed a 360-degree circle, weights, measures, plots, agriculture, and then all that. And then with agriculture came religious propaganda to control the masses. And so this religious propaganda went all over Europe and all over everywhere except here on Turtle Island, north and south. And so we are the ones who are able to see with a clearer vision on what colonization is and how to decolonize. And decolonization is just the identification of colonizing forces. It's not a path, it's not a road. Re-indigenization is the path, it's the road. It's our only hope, if we're going to have future generations, is to re-indigenize all those folks who are doing the damage out there. Because it's only because that they're ex-indigenous that they are causing all this harm. So they need to develop a kin-centric relationship with everything, father, son, grandmother moon, grandfather, son, Mother Earth, Father Sky, all these things, all our elder relatives, who, all these animals, they all contributed to us being here on this earth. A hummingbird gave us language. It flies backwards, flies everywhere. A deer sacrificed itself so it could feed us and keep us warm. So it's a model of courage. All these clans, these animals, they are a governing system. They teach us how to govern ourselves, like our chiefs are the Crane clan and the Loon clan. The Loon clan is the inner chief, and it's all in the stars, and it goes and works the inner circle, and the Crane clan works the outer circle, and so these are the chiefs, and so they watch each other. They work with each other. The Fish clan, Yigun, there are philosophers because they're always looking up at the sky. The Eagles, there are teachers because they are able to gain the knowledge out there, in anything to do with the air, the wind. It's the air that comes through the sacred pipe, the speaking, the singing, the gathering of information into our heads. In permaculture, they have an idea called the edge. It's like where the plains meet the woods. So right along that is where the most life is, right where they meet. And our edge is our hair. So we have this brain here, and this hair gets finer and finer in order for us to relate with all of this out here. So it's like an antenna, this hair. It's a spiritual antenna. And so when we have long hair, we're able to, they've done studies on somebody sneaking up on people with long hair versus short hair. Every single time the person with long hair woke up. It's long hair that connects us, to our, and these hard surfaces, they're no good or relating. And so we were fringe, we were feathers, you know, so to break up this surface, to be more interrelated with this. And so we wore these feathers, you know, to resonate with that bird, you know, because these birds, they have a power, you know, like the cedar, you know, has a power. We use that cedar to send up that good stuff, because only the good stuff rises with cedar. Only the good stuff rises with cedar. So it purifies.
So what's your definition of colonizing forces, and what's your definition of indigeneity?
Colonizing forces, media, fashion, sports, industry, agriculture, unbridled technology, prisons, all these things that divide, conquer, and diminish us. And put us into an extractive feeding position that we can't get out of because we lack the critical thought to get ourselves out of this feeding position. So and you know, they all have a purpose. You know, the religion steals your critical thought and overindulges you with cognitive dissonance. Sports and trains a nation state mentality. Fashion makes you insecure. All these things have a purpose. They work in concert. They work in orchestra to divide, conquer, and diminish us, make us smaller, put us in a lack mindset, in a fear lack mindset. So, and that's what this economy does. This economy is a scarcity economy. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. So, because of the way they do things, you know. So, indigeneity is community. Indigeneity is knowing that only one person can say I. Only one can say I. I can't say I. Because we are the same. We're connected, you know. We're one body. You know, Daniel Suello has a video where he says, if the right hand pulls a splinter from the left hand, does the left hand feel indebted to the right hand? Does the right hand feel that it's owed something? You know, no, we're one body. We didn't have a word for thank you because that's a spiritually mature society, that we take care of each other because we are each other. And thank you, it's a separating, dividing thing. It's a noun-based thing. It pulls people apart, the thank you, you know. I mean, you may think it helps, but...
The Yurok language, the Yurok language doesn't have a word for thank you either.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we don't have a word for like a male or female, you know. It's... everything is very fluid, you know, so we have a word for man and a word for woman, but not, you know, I mean, for men and do this or do that, you know. So
I believe in my tribe, actually, we did have female and male roles traditionally.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like the women would take care of the children, and then the men were acted as the leaders of the tribe, and they even stayed in separate plank houses. The children would stay with the women, and the men will stay with the men. And there's two separate languages. There's the woman language and the man language. So you grow up learning the woman language as a child, and then as a boy, once he starts becoming a man, he'll go live with the men and learn the men language.
Yeah. Our word for woman, they say yes. They say hey, yeah. You know, we say ha.
Yeah. So the reason why I asked to make that distinction between colonizing forces and indigeneity is most people would equate race to that equation. And so what's your opinion behind that?
Well, race was invented for the slave trade to dehumanize people. So it's an invention. Mm-hmm. There's no race. There's only blending of cultures, you know. And so the whole idea of race is a false idea that puts us at odds with each other. So what was the question again?
Yeah, you're answering it is the reason why I wanted to ask you about your distinction between colonizing forces and indigeneity was because people would automatically attach race to that. When you hear indigenous, you're in America, you're thinking Native American. But indigenous also could be, you know, African or something else. And then usually when you hear colonizing forces, you're automatically going to think white European. And so I was just asking you what your personal opinion behind that, attaching race to those.
It's only because the white Europeans have developed the grain, which made them in power. So Eurasia is a horizontal country, and the grain grows well, so they gained population. So the grain, stored goods, means more babies. More babies means more stored goods. So it's a self-population feedback loop. So, but really it started in Africa. In the Sinai Peninsula, in the Mesopotamia, and it went all the way to Africa. It went everywhere.
Life so, you're talking about.
No, colonization.
Colonization started in Africa.
Yeah.
By what, the Moors?
No, it started in Mesopotamia with the ancient Sumerians and the Akkadians, and so these guys. As a matter of fact, the whole Bible, that's where that comes from, is the ancient Sumer and the Akkadians, the library, Ashurbanipal, Nag Hammadi, there's the ancient Dead Sea Scrolls. These are all books found that predated the Bible, that made the whole Bible. There are 26 books that were removed from the Bible. They're called the Apocrypha. And so there's like the Book of Adam, where he discovers that, hey, we're all aliens. What?
The Book of Enoch.
The Book of Enoch, yeah, same thing. Yeah, his experiences in the spaceship, been traveled. He's the only one that didn't die. All that stuff, So they say Enoch is now the ruling God in the absence of Yahweh, or I forgot the name of it. So, anyways, they have a creation story called the Enuma Elish, where basically they have a race of people come from a planet Nibiru. These, what are they called? I forgot.
Anunnaki?
Yeah. And so they brought with them a couple 100,000 Igigi to mine gold and make cities. And then they got tired and they revolted. And they revolted against Enlil's castle. Now, Enlil in ancient Akkadian is called Satan. Okay, so the administrator. So that's the translation for that. So and the Egyptians compared Enlil, the Yahweh, because Enlil becomes Yahweh, the Jehovah, the Elohim, the Allah. That's all Enlil, all from the stories of ancient Sumer. So all that stuff wrote all these books, from ancient Sumerian, the Enuma Elish, the creation story, created them as slave race. To replace the Igigi who were revolting, they didn't want to mine the gold anymore. Mm-hmm. And so Enlil had a brother named Enki, and Enki was a geneticist, and he says, hey, wait, hold on, revolters, there's an early hominid that we can mix our DNA with and create a slave race. And they said in the ancient cuneiform tablets, that one's leg was shorter than the other, one couldn't use his arms, one couldn't think, until they finally made the first Adamu, and they named him Adapa. And they made many Adamus as a slave race. And then they got tired of it and made the first woman, and her name was Titi or Tiamat, the first Eve. And Enki, is going to have his wife carry the first zygote of the female, but then the fertility goddess Mami said, no, I'll carry it. Says, I'll carry it for 10 months, and made the first female. So now they can mate. Now they're in the Garden of Eden, and which is a genetic laboratory, Eden. And then Enki, the creator, was talking to them in the garden, and he says, hey, you know what? You actually can be greater than us gods. And they said, what? We're not animals? And they put on clothes. In walks Enlil into the Eden, and says, where are my children? The all-knowing, all-omnipotent Enlil can't find his children. And he says, we were hiding. He says, why were you hiding? He says, we were naked. Who told you you were naked? All this stuff made it into the Bible. So this is the origin of the Christianity, Judeo-Christian, Judaism, Muslim.
So it all comes from one place, these colonizing forces, which you're saying is all part of the greater religions, the biblical religions. So the path, you said it's not a pathway to indigeneity, but it sounds like part of the to re-indigenize is to no longer adhere to these biblical religions. Is that kind of what you're saying?
For sure that. Yeah.
So
because it's patriarchy. So patriarchy is a straight line. It's go out, harvest resources, bring them back to the village. It's point A, point B. It's bit on, bit off. It's the dichotomy view of the universe, light, dark, all that stuff, But women is a circle, and it's regenerative, it's communicative. And so the men's shape is the straight line. The women's shape is the circle. You could see it in our genitalia.
Okay.
So that's and that's our power. That's our medicine. We start the fire. We go out and harvest resources to bring back to the village. The women, the house is the woman's, because the babies, we were housed in the woman, in her womb. So the house is an extension of the womb. And the garden is the woman's as well, because we were fed in the garden. And so the garden is the woman's. The blanket, the shawl, that's the woman's as well, because we were kept warm in the womb. And these are all extensions of the woman. And on the acorn pounders out here, they don't sing love songs while they're pounding because their pestle might break. They want an arbor over them because the pounding might call the thunders. They don't drink water while they're pounding acorns because the acorns might not dry correctly. So they are intrinsically connected. It's a shape like the universe, the woman, the earth. So it's the woman who is the power over the food and taking care of the children. That's her medicine. And there is no straight lines in nature. You can take an edge of a crystal, put it under a microscope, it's going to go like that. Waves, light go like that. Water goes like that.
So how do we move to a place where because it would take convincing, the people with the biblical religions within, the church and the temple and wherever else they practice has a really strong hold on people mentally, and spiritually. And they're connected with their heart and through their ancestors. So how do you go and then tell these people some of them probably been practicing for hundreds and thousands of years down their ancestral line, that, hey, what you've been thinking and doing has been wrong this entire time?
There are nuggets of goodness in every culture, but the overall, like I like chickens, okay? Chickens are fun. They're cute, but I don't like the whole idea of chickens being here on Turtle Island, nor cows or pigs or sheep, goats, any of that. If the Christians were raptured, all their animals would eat this place up. So, what was the question again?
Yeah, how do we begin that conversation? To about re-indigenizing people who've been practicing this religion for thousands of years. If anything, that is their indigenous nature.
Yeah. Well, for the last few thousand years, 10,000 years maybe, 8. But the DNA is hundreds of thousands of years. So the indigenous DNA is much more powerful in them than the colonized DNA. Everyone wants to belong. Everyone wants to be part of a community. Everyone wants security, and that's what community provides. It provides resources. Me, without my community, I'm like 1 foot, missing fingers, no hand on this and half a brain, because my community completes me. It helps me realize my potential. I wouldn't even know I existed without my community. And so to have them to re-indigenize is to learn about these trees, their names, their contributions, learn the stories of the cedar and how, Spider Woman dropped us down on a great tall cedar and a great bear met us halfway. Learn the stories of the animals and what they do in the summer and what they do in the winter, all their contributions, who flies through here, Name, what is that plant? What's the medicinal, utilitarian food uses of that plant? And plant more. And find out its true name by the local natives, what they call that plant. And then you can harvest that plant. Because you want to call that plant by its true name. These are all elder relatives that we're talking about here. They all have a medicine to contribute on an equal but different basis. Veganism is created by Christian hierarchy because they value the mobile spirits than the immobile spirits. So they only eat the immobile ones because whatever.
They don't feel like it's alive.
Yeah. Or have a sentience. Or a medicine. And really, and if you become a Christian, your world dies. All of these animals, they have a spirit, all these trees, these plants, these mountains, they all have spirits, but when you're in a Christian, it all becomes segmented by straight lines and sold and commodified.
How you're viewing things is what the Christians would view as paganism. And then they have this kind of negative term for what we're discussing. They would call that worshiping false gods.
We only worship a universal great mystery, not a man, not a woman. And it's not even like it's more like a pattern, like a creative pattern that embodies all things, that reflects itself on this earth as the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, sacred geometry, all of these things is what that great pattern of that great mystery is made of. And so it's also in our stories in human form. Because in our stories, the sun came close to the moon because that great mystery just made the moon, and it came too close and put a crack in it, and rainbows came out. And great mystery said, "This is life," and made the planets out of it. And so we are light. We are made of light, and this materialism, that they push forward, that's very unhealthy for us. We're only here for a little while, and to have the problem with the Christians, okay, they're hermetically sealed. They can't pray to their God. They have to pray through a third-person proxy called Jesus Christ. They can't even say their own prayers. Some man on the altar spreads his arms and says their prayer for them. They can't own their evils. They can't heal their evils because some third-person entity called Satan owns their evils and makes them do things, so they can't heal themselves. Okay? So then you look at the idea of evil. Okay? No indigenous culture anywhere has an idea of pure evil. Nothing like that exists in indigenous countries, cultures, and therefore no sin, and therefore no salvation. And that's what we're up against, this idea of salvation that the Christians don't want to waste their salvation on by exploring indigenous cultures, because they've been indoctrinated with fear, control, and a lack mindset, because they can't pray. They're powerless. We are this. This is power. That's what that is. We are power. Yeah.
Explain that. We are power. So, and also since we're having a Christian lens discussion, when you say we are power, then you're basically, what they would hear is that you are God, and which is like another kind of sinful way to look at things is you're not God. Is how they would see that.
I am part of the great mystery, as are they, whether they realize it or not, because everything expands from the first thought. Is there anything out there? That's the one source. And if you talk in quantum entanglement, if we all come from one source, if we're all created at one time, we're all quantumly entangled. So yeah, it's kind of my view on that.
All right. Well, yeah, that's definitely an interesting topic, and there's all kinds of tangents we could definitely go super deep in and have a wild conversation. But what I wanted to get into, and before we get into it, just both of the red lights are still on the cameras, right? Yeah. All right. So you're also a permaculture specialist, right? So can you explain to me what permaculture is? Because I feel like it's a word that most people probably haven't heard.
It's a design system that helps put us in balance with our elder relatives. It feeds us and feeds them. So there's a zone system based on frequencies of trips. Like zone 1 is right around the house, maybe an herb garden. Zone 2 is your garden, larger garden. Zone 3 would be maybe your food forest. Zone 4 would be your field. Zone 5 is the woods. And then they have also sectors, like where's the wind coming from? Where's the sun in the winter? And where's the sun in summer? How to design properties and how to do it. Basically, it's kind of a handbook on how to deal with nature and how to live in harmony with that. But it's not the destination. It's a bridge to the destination, because the destination is re-indigenization.
So to put it simply, permaculture is a sustainable way to create resources that work well with nature, or how would you put that?
Yeah. So, like for example, a farm would want to have a closed loop system. So if they have animals, they use their manure for their garden. They wouldn't have a market garden, because that's nutrients and water going out of their system.
What's a market garden?
I have a friend who has a farm, and she sells her produce at the farmer's market. Mm-hmm. And that's what she does for a living, so that's a market garden. And so, so it's...
So the idea would be to have a garden to sustain your own food sources, not to have an abundance that you then sell for profit. That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's one aspect. So there's many aspects of permaculture too. Permaculture can be used in the home. Nothing to do with food, nothing to do with out there. The zone 1 could be my family and friends. Zone 2 is my close friends. Zone 3 is my acquaintances. Zone 4 is people I hardly ever meet with. Just zone 5 are the people I don't want to meet. And so you can translate sectors into a business. Where's the cash flow coming from? Where's it going out? Where's the help coming from? What are the externalities? As they put it. All these things can be done in a permaculture design system.
Okay. I feel like I'm a little more confused now.
Yeah.
So permaculture is a way of life.
Permaculture is a design system that can be applied to many things. So it can be applied to city building. It can be applied to a state, how they do things, inside a home, a business, the garden, forestry.
So what made you get into permaculture, and what is your goal from collecting this knowledge?
Actually, I brought in a permaculture teacher to teach people here. I didn't have the time to do it, but my nonprofit can bring somebody in to teach other people permaculture, so we can help by educating other people. It turns out he really wanted to see me get a PDC, a permaculture design certificate, and so he stayed for like 2 months in a tent to teach me to get my PDC. Yeah. And so, I again, I wanted to, but I couldn't afford the time. But he was able to make it happen. So I became, and then I went to, became a certified permaculture instructor, and I am the first male Native man certified permaculture instructor in the world.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't want to waste that opportunity. So I'm starting a Turtle Island Permaculture Institute, TP.
That's a clever name.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's almost it was almost designed. It was like, okay, here it is. You can't look away.
I can already see the logo.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The logo is going to be like a woman, but her dress is the teepee, and the teepee poles are pointing out to the Pleiades, where we come from.
And for legal reasons, that's already enough to copyright. so no one could take that.
All right.
So, where do you go from here? You have that certification. We're up here in Southern Oregon. There's all kinds of issues to tackle that you could do with permaculture. What is kind of your first?
Water in the soil. So there's a guy named Walter Yenna, a soil microbiologist from down under. His last name is spelled Jehne, and I suggest everyone check out his video. He says that carbon capture, carbon sequestration is, he didn't say that, but he's saying that it's a corporate straw man, and a money-making straw man. So because as soon as you draw the carbon out of the atmosphere, the oceans, which have been acting as a carbon bank since the Industrial Revolution, will re-equilibrate that carbon back into the atmosphere, putting us at state zero. And so it'll take us 1,000 years in order to have the first effect on the atmosphere right now, okay? So
carbon in the atmosphere is a good thing?
No.
It's a bad thing?
Bad. Carbon should be in the soil. Right now we have less oxygen in the atmosphere, because it's in the soil. And the carbon that should be in the soil is in the atmosphere. So it's a topsy-turvy world that we're living in.
But why is the oxygen in the soil and the carbon in the air, not the other way around?
When you till, you introduce a nitrous oxide comes off of it, and oxygen gets locked into the soil. It's called oxidation. And so the soil oxidizes, gathering all these oxygen molecules, and then the carbon, because it just gets in the atmosphere from all the tilling, nitrous oxide again, and just going up into all the burning fossil fuels mainly, as the carbon. So two things that I really want to do. Right now in that stove, you see how it's going really good.
Yeah.
There's an enamel roasting pan with wood scraps in there. So I'm pyrolyzing wood in the enamel pan, and when it's done, it's going to be pure char, pure carbon. And then I bury that, and then when you bury that, that's in the soil for 1,000 years. Half the tree's weight is carbon. If that tree weighs 2 tons, 1 ton of that is carbon. That can be put into the soil and sequestered for 1,000 years.
But they say burning wood is worse for the environment than electricity.
Wood is carbon in play. It's carbon already on the surface of the earth, okay? Electricity is digging carbon up from the ground. Electricity is...
But when you burn wood, doesn't it release all that carbon into the air?
It does. And in a natural situation, without fossil fuels, no issue. Been burning wood for hundreds of thousands of years, But because now we have fossil fuels, they're demonifying wood burning in favor of fossil fuels.
So if we replace fossil fuels with wood burning, it wouldn't have as bad of an effect, even if there's billions of people doing it.
No, see, and that's the issue, right? Okay, I want to re-indigenize. I don't want to see, in the world, there are 60% livestock, 4% wildlife, the rest are humans. 60% life, it's an enslavement world, okay? We need to reverse this trend. And so Turtle Island Permaculture Institute will not be teaching animal husbandry because that's not the way they did it here.
Animal husbandry.
That's making animals, having cows, having horses, having sheep, all that
making
stuff.
Making them mate.
You're making a mate, or just keeping them, and medication taking. It's a whole field. Yeah.
So then people are supposed to be vegan?
People are supposed to hunt their food.
Okay. All right.
And so because these animals have made agreements to take care of us, and we're dishonoring those agreements if we're not hunting them. They want to feed us. They want to help us. These trees are listening to us right now, and seeing that something good is happening, These are spirits, that we're dealing with, And so, and when we have livestock, then we are following the pattern of the enslaved mentality, okay? So Mother Earth is in giveaway mode. That's Mother Earth's pattern. It
Abundance.
taught us,
Abundance, yeah.
It taught us to be in giveaway mode. It taught us our economy. It taught us our giveaway, potlatch, all that stuff. That's who we are, because we are following the energetic pattern of Mother Earth's giveaway mode. When we're not in giveaway mode, we're bucking natural law.
So in a modern world, how do we make this indigenous, re-indigenization dream happen? Because it sounds like it feels like we've come so far that it would be nearly impossible to backtrack to what you're talking about.
It absolutely is. We can't. No, there's too much momentum in this economy. We are heading toward the cliff, and we're going to go over the cliff. That's why it's important now to create communities with resiliency. Permaculture community gave it about 10 years till collapse, but since AI, 5 years. So, and that's about enough time to put in a food forest, build community.
Like the Amazon. Yeah, I found out that the Amazon is a food forest.
Yeah, now this whole North America, everywhere was a food forest.
Actually I did hear that in North America, all these woods all the way across.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to walk from ocean to ocean and starve. They said Willamette Valley was like a garden because it was a garden.
I think it's the most beautiful place on earth.
It really is, yeah. And our ancestors took care of that and provided that abundance for us.
So 5 years, that sounds, when people hear that, they're going to be two different reactions, right? There's going to be the one reaction where they're absolutely terrified. They are scared for the future and they don't know what to do, right? And then you got the other side that's going to be like, oh, what a load of bull crap. This guy does not know what he's talking about. 5 years. So my first question would be, what happens in those 5 years when it collapses? Is everybody just dying or?
Yeah, nobody knows, right? I mean, I'm not a prophet. I think there's going to be communities of resilience who have their own food forests and gardens and make their own clothing and make their own shoes and help each other in a market economy because that is a matriarch economy, a market trade economy. That's what used to be here. So the old ways are coming back, and there's going to be a great purification. And so we can't turn this around with this many people. Most of the people have to move on to the next world in order for the people on this world to have a good time. But we're only here for a little while anyway. I mean, like our peoples, they say we're seeded here from the Pleiades, and that yes, they use the earth to make our bodies, that Gitchumani do, and the animals, and that we take care of this because we're not from here, because we're just only living here for a little while. Whose place this really is a Mimigwesi, the little people. They were here before us. This is their earth. So we're here like a little training ground. And then we move to the next world. Which is just like this world.
Just like this world, as in like
mosquitoes, winters, stomach aches.
So just like another planetary type of civilization.
There's different stories, different stories from different communities. Like our creation story, it's told just a little different from community to community, and they're all true. It's like all creation stories are true. So like the Enuma Elish, that's a true one as well.
I do think there's levels of consciousness, and what you're referring to would be us transferring to another world on the same level of consciousness. But I think that there's capabilities of devolving or evolving to higher or lower planes of existence.
Well, in our stories, I say there's a strawberry path that you go, and you follow this path, and your people will give you extra pair of moccasins, and then they'll put tobacco in both your hands, and And you'll come to a fork in the road, and a fork in the road, there's going to be a little house here with pearls and jewels on it, and that's the Christian. That's where they go. And then over here, there's a path into the woods, and then that leads up to a river, and there's going to be a stick there, standing there, and you offer your tobacco to that stick, because that stick is a man spirit. And then for safe crossing, and you cross the log that's in the river. And if you have been bad to dogs, if you harm dogs, you'll hear a great bang from the universe, and the log will start spinning, and you could fall into the creek and get lost into the matrix of the universe. But if you've been good to dogs, they will help you across, and then you will go through another woods and to a village where your family has prepared your lodge for you.
My sister would love to hear that. She loves dogs, and she feels like anybody who's been mean to a dog deserves damnation, if you will.
Yeah. It's part of our creation story is when the Buju first man went around the world, noticed that all the beings had a partner. He goes, well, I don't have a partner. And Great Mystery says, oh, let me get you a partner. So they made Maingan, the wolf. And so, and they walk the world.
So how do you feel about cats then?
Nah, they shouldn't be here. They're an
What?
invasive species.
Oh, man,
Invasive species. They're hunting all our birds.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's outside cats.
Yeah.
Outside cats do account for, I think, billions of birds that they're killing.
Yeah, billions.
Every year. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that number, that's wild. Yeah. I have an indoor cat, though. Mm-hmm. Jasper, he probably wouldn't like to hear that. You don't think he should be here. He's a funny guy. So how do you integrate this re-indigenization with this new modern world? How does that integrate? Because there's not going to be one or the other. I mean, they can't exist separately is what I'm saying. Like, you're not going to go backwards and you're not going to go completely forwards. How do you integrate?
Right now, the most basic way to re-indigenize is what I said earlier, is to learn about all the plants and all the animals and how to contribute to that life. Because we, as my viewpoint, we have two jobs as human beings. Learn. Well, that's more than one job. It's like 4 or 5. and contribute to life. Because that's what all these other animals do. They contribute to life. So we should be contributing to life as well, and where we lack that, we've lost our original instructions, So that is the first step to re-indigenization. And when these native local tribe people see you being of beneficial creature to out in the woods and out in the deserts and stuff, they're going to look on you differently. And then if you start bringing these tribe gifts, then you can start making relationships with these tribes, because there's a sacred reciprocity that has to be honored when you bring gifts. So that's the way, people don't know that, that's the way into tribal relations is by gifts, because there's a reciprocity that has to be honored there. Because natural law.
And specifically making these connections with your local tribes to receive that sacred knowledge is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they'll have you.
Because I feel like people may hear that and their ego may hear that as in we're some type of chosen people that need, because that's the way their mind thinks, especially biblically tied people they feel they're the chosen people. And so you telling people that they need to reach out to tribal communities they're going to hear that as you saying, you're not chosen, you're forsaken, you need to reach out to the real chosen people, the indigenous people.
No, I like that. It'd be a good, nice humbling experience for them, because we all could use a little bit of humility, And that's part of the fear thing, right? Is being all up in your ego. It's all insecurity, So if they're coming at me with all their insecurities, it's obvious that it's their insecurities that's talking, So, but they're damaged. They're coming from a fear-lack base, and they don't have a lot of critical thought, Because if they did have critical thought, then they would research the history of the religion. What am I? What's in my life here? What is this? What am I praying to? What is that? Nobody does that. They just take it. They just take information as they go. So I call that code, okay? So religion is the world's first AI. It lives on our computers, and it uploads, and colonization, it's the same thing. Uploads code from, downloads code from the church, media, fashion, sports, industry, government, military, all this stuff, And without critical thought, it spins our head, and we can't think our way out of a paper bag, if we have all of this coming at us without critically thinking about it. Everything is about critical thought, everything, Without critical thought, we are just pinballing, from our emotions in a reactionary state. And that's what colonization does, because colonization is an addiction, okay? And when we're all addicts, we're all in a dry drunk situation, unable to grow, unable to see the pot that we're in, the bucket that we're in. We're so deep in the bucket, So yeah,
I do think that AI is a way to artificially speed humans along evolution versus allowing it to do it ourselves. For example, like the internet, and you type in ChatGPT and you can find anything, all the information you need. Well, that's just a way to keep us from connecting to the collective conscious. We could already download this information if you are able to spiritually access that collective conscious, which has been proven to be a real, through the scientific method, the collective conscious has been proven to be real, even outside of people who've practiced spiritualism. And then you got augmented reality, where you put on, your virtual glasses, and then you can add layers onto your reality digitally. Well, that's just keeping you from being able to evolve to a state where you can access visually the other information that we wouldn't necessarily be able to see right now with the eyes that we have currently. And it also, when you use that digital world to now transform and mold the reality around you, that keeps you from spiritually growing to a place where you can manifest the reality and mold it through practice. That's how I see AI.
Well, there's a spirituality. Spirituality comes from the vibration of the universe. It doesn't come from the light bulb or the coffee pot or AI. There's this fire right here. That's a spiritual fire. It has red and infrared that light that heals my body. But if I'm on a gas or electrical heat, there's no medicine there, And now I have to work for my heat now too, and that is reciprocity, So it's best that we work for our conveniences. So AI, again, we download code, and without critical thought, we become pure code. We become pure code. We become amygdala thinkers. The medical field did a study on people, EEG, and they gave them a critical thought problem, and the conservatives, right amygdala fired up. Non-conservatives, parietal lobe, frontal lobe, all that, but and when the amygdala fires up, shuts down portions of your brain, limits others, puts all the energy into your muscles in a fight, flight, freeze mode, so you can't think critically. So their critical thought center is in a neural web of fear. That's why they don't think critically.
The colonizers.
Yeah, the colonizers. And the colonizers are the main colonizers are the men. So because the men are living in a fear-lack mindset, because we're not allowed to talk with each other. The only time we're allowed to touch each other is with our fists. We don't have that beautiful support that human beings need, And so that's how colonized moves forward, is the fear-based mindset.
So also what I really wanted to talk about in this conversation is about water reclamation. That's a huge topic here in Southern Oregon and Northern California, especially with all the tribes and the dam removal and the Klamath River, and you have the farmers and the ranchers. everybody's been at each other's throats since at least the 80s, but the first dam was built in the early 1900s, I think 1918. And since then, it's kind of been a fight over the water. And so, especially now that the dams are down and the river is free flowing for the first time in 100 years, it's flowing straight to the Klamath, the mouth of the Klamath. And a lot of the farmers and ranchers think that it's just going to completely drain out in the ocean. And they're having trouble getting water reclamation permits because they need those waters to put onto their lands, to feed their crops and their animals. And so I feel like you might have an answer to where and how we can move forward to fix these. At least I would like to try to bring the conversation to how we can come to a center focus of a solution.
Yeah. Well, in the state of Oregon, you can move or do earthworks for emergency relief and land improvement, but not for water infiltration. So there's many water infiltration earthworks, johads, swales, keyline plows, diversion channels, ponds connecting to each other that slow spreads and sinks water on the ground, allowing it to infiltrate and percolate and recharge our streams and rivers and aquifers. So if we corrugated this land, we would be gathering water, recharging.
What does corrugate mean?
It's just making waves like this, just like a corrugated roof, dips and hollows. Right up on top there, I have a food forest, and I have swales in there. And swales are ditches on contour, so they're level, so when water hits them, they'll fill up and then they'll sink in, okay? So underneath my trees, after 7 years, water will be continually sinking in. It's going to form a lens of water underneath my trees that the trees will tap into. I will never have to water my trees ever, and all the other things that grow underneath there, because those swales will eventually go away, but the trees are now doing the job. So and there's yeoman plows where you just scratch the dirt and water infiltrates. It's the fastest way to create topsoil. And you have johads or crescents, where a crescent ditch, when you put a tree in the middle there and you fill it with detritus, and that catches water, and you could dot the landscape with these crescents, and put all that water in the ground. So when you put water in the soil, you create green living things. Increased surface root growth, increased leaves, increased leaf stomata. The leaf stomata puts out heat, oxygen, hygroscopic bacteria that goes up into the atmosphere, and this hygroscopic bacteria is the prime substrate for clouds. And so you increase cloud albedo, cloud shading, shading the earth, and for every gram of water evaporated off the Earth's surface, it's 590 calories of heat energy that goes up and mostly escapes into space. So that's the way to cool the earth. And when you have water in the soil, you increase the nutrient cycling. And when you increase the nutrient cycling, you increase the animal population. And the animal population increases the carbon in the soil, which increases the water in the soil, increases the animal population, which it's a self-positive feedback loop, water in the soil.
So what is the process currently that's being used? The standard, and then what's the standard for this area and the standard in general?
There is no process. It's illegal in the state of Oregon to do things like that. It's
illegal.
Yeah, it's you can't build a pond. You can surf. You can harvest rain, roof water, and that's about it. So and
I think people down in California right now, in LA, hearing you say that it's illegal to have a sustainable water practice, or
yes,
crying next to their burnt down house right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And Nestle really took them for a ride.
Yeah. There's another family, I forget their names. They own 60% of the water supply in California because they have a pomegranate farm and cashews. Wow. And so they own, they lobbied to be able to transfer the water from a government state-owned to a privately owned, and then they purchased 60% of the water sources.
So I signed up with a water leak board, and you introduced us to the mayor of Central Point, Tania Browning. Yeah, and we are going to meet on the 20th for a 30-acre demonstration water infiltration site, so that we can demonstrate to the state of Oregon about water infiltration, put the idea in their head about recharging, and so. Because it's my idea that the state should make ranchers, farmers, large landholders put water harvesting earthworks on their property, and if they can't do that for some reason, pay into a state fund that puts water harvesting earthworks all over the state, recharging our aquifers, remaking animals.
So essentially, this practice wouldn't just be on private land. This would be on public land as well, where there aren't any type of infrastructure built.
Yeah, at least private and state. So, I mean, we got to get to the federal. So, but of course, it's going to have to start on a municipal level, and that's where we're doing it. And then there's another water sequestration project up in Eugene that I got a call on. So, with a traditional ecological knowledge group up there wants to do some water harvesting earthworks up there.
Do you foresee yourself running into a problem with the local landowners with this water reclamation process? Because, a lot of conversations in the past between the state, the tribes, local government, the landowners, they turn violent sometimes. They don't like to get together. So,
well, this is all it is digging ditches. So it's just a little bit of diesel. Maybe rent equipment, and it's a very logical that once they hear the explanation about water in the soil creating life, most people I think would get on with that idea, especially if the state puts out an education around it, because this is our future generations that we're talking about, because they need the animals to give them life. Right now, we only have 4% of our elder relatives. They're the ones who created all this greenery, who gave us life. We're going to see a slow diminishment of all of this out here because we don't have the birds putting out the seeds and the deer pooping and the elk and all the bear and all that stuff and the salmon bringing fertility up the rivers. So this is it's going to be hard.
So, let's say that. We're able to affect policy, right? And Oregon, within the next 6 months, implements this across the state. How quickly do you think that will affect change?
I see it affecting the very following year because we're going to start getting water, and you're going to start seeing surface growth. So the first thing you're probably going to see is cloud albedo increasement. It'll increase the reflectivity of the clouds, so it'll become more cloudy and foggy, more moisture here, and then pretty soon all that, of course, moisture does the nutrient cycling, which creates nutritious plants, which feeds the animals. When nutritious plant makes animals make babies.
and another thing is, we live in a location where it's very wet. It's rainy around the year. Maybe not so much in the summer, but there is a lot of rain up here. And so someone from like Arizona or Nevada will hear you talk about this and say, oh, well, that's nice, but we don't get rain. Mm-hmm. So for communities like that, what's the answer?
There is no difference. Communities like that, they just need more carbon, more mulch to hold water in the soil. So there's a type of farming called dry farming where you don't water at all. But what you do is you give it a deep watering, and then you put a light duff on top. And the light duff on top will help to protect the moisture underneath. So there's various ways of dry farming. And there's people in Arizona, there's the Conservation Corps put in swales in Arizona, I think 80 years ago, and they were still sequestering water. It's the only green spot in that whole area. So if they want to say, hey, is this going to work? Look at that one site that Civilian Conservation Corps installed in the middle of the desert. It's all a bunch of swales, and it's all green.
So this is a known practice for so long, and how come we haven't implemented it anywhere?
Nobody's making money off it. There's got to be an incentive.
That private water interest, huh?
Yeah, it can't be. And the private water laws are insane, insanely antiquated. So it's basically who killed the natives first, who gets the water rights, and who has the powerful lobby position.
Yeah, that's wild. All right, well, I appreciate you having this conversation with me. I feel like we really covered a lot of amazing topics people are going to resonate with. So
Good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for having me in your home. I really appreciate that as well. I hope we continue to work together. Yeah. And I'm excited to see where this land thing goes over in Central Point. And I'm definitely going to try to catch as much video and pictures and keep everybody updated about what's going on.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, and thank you for the gifts. I appreciate that. Miigwech.
Appreciate it. All right.